At 7:12 a.m., my sister forwarded me an email that wasn't meant for me. The subject line read, "Final guest count, private ceremony only." I knew it was about my wedding before I opened it. The venue, the date, my date. My name was missing. I stood barefoot in my kitchen, coffee going cold in my hand, rereading the forwarded message while the city outside my apartment window woke up like nothing had happened. Traffic hummed. A dog barked somewhere below. Normal life continued while something quiet and irreversible settled in my chest. The email wasn't cruel. That was the worst part. It was polite, efficient, corporate even. Due to space constraints and the desire to keep the ceremony intimate, we finalized the guest list. Please see the attached spreadsheet for confirmations. Attached spreadsheet. Tabs. Color-coded columns. Family marked in soft blue. My parents' names were there. My younger sister, Claire, her fiancé, my grandmother, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Mine wasn't. I scrolled. Once. Twice. Slowly. Like maybe my eyes were the problem. Nothing. I set the mug down on the counter before my hand started shaking enough to spill it. This wasn't a mistake. Mistakes come with apologies. This was a decision. My phone buzzed again. A text this time. Claire. Hey, just saw the list. Don't freak out. Mom will explain later. Later. The word my family used when they needed time to agree on a story. I leaned against the counter and closed my eyes. I wasn't angry yet. Anger takes time. First comes that hollow, sinking feeling, like the floor has shifted, but your body hasn't caught up. I'm 32 years old. I run compliance for a mid-sized healthcare company in Northern California. I pay my own rent, my own insurance. I've been financially independent since I was 21. I'm not dramatic. I don't beg. I don't explode. But I've spent my whole life trying to be reasonable in a family that only respects leverage. My name is Laura Bennett. And that email was how I learned I'd been quietly uninvited from my own sister's wedding. It wasn't supposed to matter this much. I told myself that while I showered, while I dressed for work, while I tied my hair back with the same steady hands I used in boardrooms and audits. But weddings are never just weddings in families like mine. They're balance sheets, statements of value, proof of who counts. By the time I got to the office, I already knew this wasn't about seating limits or intimacy. It was about optics. Claire was marrying into money, old money, the kind that says things like summer as a verb and owns a vineyard they don't talk about. Her fiancé's family had opinions. My mother had always listened. Laura, she said, breathless, like she'd been busy. I was just about to reach out. I let the silence stretch long enough to make her uncomfortable. I saw the guest list, I said. A pause. Then a sigh, carefully calibrated. Well, yes, about that. We've had to make some adjustments. The venue is smaller than expected, she continued. And the Harringtons are very particular. They want a certain tone. Tone, as in, not me. I've already RSVP'd, yes, I said. My voice sounded distant, even to me. I booked time off. You asked me to help with the rehearsal dinner. Another pause. This one longer. That was before we understood the full picture, she said. Honey, this isn't personal. That was the moment something shifted. Because it was personal. It always had been. Claire had always been the soft one. The pretty one, the one who needed protection. I was the capable one, the one who could handle disappointment, the one who didn't need much. So we think it might be better, my mother said carefully, if you sat this one out. Just the ceremony. You can come to the brunch the next day. I laughed once. A short sound, sharp. You're uninviting me from my sister's wedding, I said. But I can come to the brunch. It's not uninviting, she insisted. It's just managing expectations. I thought of the spreadsheet, the neat blue cells, the way my absence had been decided without a single conversation. Did Claire agree to this? I asked. Another pause. She understands, my mother said. She doesn't want drama. Drama. I ended the call politely, told her I had a meeting, hung up before my voice could change. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I went to my desk and opened the file I'd been reviewing earlier that morning. An internal audit. A family-owned logistics company applying for a government contract. The last name on the application made my stomach tighten. Harrington. Same family, different branch, different company. Or so they thought. I stared at the screen, the pieces clicking together slowly, methodically. Compliance does that to you. It trains you to notice patterns other people miss. This wasn't just about a wedding. It was about appearances, about alliances, about making sure no one asked inconvenient questions about where money came from or who controlled what. And suddenly, my absence made perfect sense. They didn't. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was alert. That night, Claire didn't call. Neither did my father. My grandmother sent me a heart emoji and a vague "love you," which told me everything I needed to know. They were circling the wagons. At 10:47 p.m., I opened a new folder on my laptop and titled it simply Bennett. I didn't know yet what I would do. I just knew I was done pretending this was accidental. Being excluded hurts. Being excluded with intention changes you. And by the time they realized what they'd actually asked me to step away from, it would already be too late. If you've ever been pushed out quietly by the people who should have stood up for you, stay with me. This wasn't the moment everything fell apart. This was the moment I stopped holding it together for everyone else. The first thing I did the next morning was nothing. No emails, no texts, no clarifications. I went to work like the spreadsheet hadn't landed in my life like a controlled demolition. That was always my instinct. When my family pulled the rug out, I learned early not to scramble. Scrambling tells people you're afraid of the fall. At 8:30 a.m., I sat in a glass-walled conference room, reviewing the Harrington Logistics compliance file with 2 analysts from my team. The fluorescent lights hummed softly. Someone coughed. A pen clicked. On paper, Harrington Logistics looked clean. Too clean. Privately held. Family-owned. 5 subsidiaries, all registered in different states. Nothing illegal at first glance. But compliance isn't about what's obvious. It's about what doesn't need to be obvious yet. Laura, one of the analysts said, "You want us to flag anything specific?" I stared at the screen a second too long. "Yes," I said finally. "Cross-reference beneficial ownership. I want to know who actually controls the voting rights, not just who's listed." The analyst nodded, typing. "Also," I added, "pull historical filings, 5 years back. Any restructuring, any sudden debt forgiveness, any shell dissolutions." He looked up. "That's a lot." "I know," I said calmly. "That's why we're doing it." At 11:02 a.m., my sister finally texted. "Claire, Mom said you're upset. I don't want this to turn into a thing." I stared at the message, thumb hovering. I imagined 100 replies. None of them would change anything. Me. "I'm not upset. I'm just paying attention." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Claire, you're reading too much into this." That line felt familiar. Like a coat I'd outgrown, but was still expected to wear. I didn't reply. At lunch, I ate at my desk. I always did when my brain was working faster than my body. Around 1:30, the first anomaly came in. One of the subsidiaries had been dissolved 18 months ago. No press release, no announcement. Just quietly folded into another entity with a different name. The name of that entity made my stomach tighten. Bennett Family Holdings, LLC. I leaned back slowly. My father's company. The company he'd sworn for years had nothing to do with the Harringtons. At 2:15 p.m., my grandmother called. "Sweetheart," she said, voice trembling with practiced concern. "Your mother is very upset." I closed my office door. "About what?" I asked. "She feels attacked," my grandmother said. "She says you're being difficult." I almost smiled. That was how it always went. Exclusion first, accusation second. "I haven't said anything," I said. "Well," she sighed, "sometimes silence says more than words." I thought of the spreadsheet again, of my name missing, like it had never existed. "Who made the final call about the wedding?" I asked. A pause. "The Harringtons had preferences," she said carefully. "And your mother felt it was best not to complicate things." "Did Claire agree?" Another pause. Longer this time. "She didn't fight it," my grandmother admitted. I thanked her and hung up. At 4:40 p.m., my analyst knocked on my door. "You should see this," he said. handing me a printed summary. It showed a web of transactions between Harrington Logistics and Bennett Family Holdings. Loans forgiven, assets transferred. All legal, all quiet. My father wasn't just adjacent to the Harringtons. He was financially entangled. And suddenly, my absence at the wedding wasn't about space or tone. It was about risk. I went home that night and didn't turn on the TV. I didn't call anyone. I opened my laptop and started pulling public records. My parents' house, still mortgaged. My father's company, leveraged. Claire's wedding venue, owned by a Harrington subsidiary. The picture sharpened with every click. They weren't just protecting appearances. They were protecting a deal. At 9:18 p.m., my father called. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Laura," he said. He sounded tired. "Your mother tells me you're taking this hard." "I'm not," I said. "I just want to understand." "Understand what?" "Why you're financially tied to the Harringtons," I said evenly. "Why your holding company absorbed one of their dissolved subsidiaries. And why my presence at the wedding is suddenly inconvenient." Silence. Then a sigh. Heavy. Old. "It's complicated," he said. "Is it?" I asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks very simple." "You're being unfair," he snapped, defensive now. "You don't see the pressure we're under." There it was. The shift. From explanation to justification. "Pressure to do what?" I asked. "Maintain an image? Secure financing? Make sure no one asks questions?" "Watch your tone," he warned. I felt something go still inside me. "I am watching it," I said. "I've been watching it my whole life." Another pause. Then softer, almost pleading. "Just let this go," he said. "After the wedding, things will settle." I looked at the calendar on my wall. The wedding was in 3 weeks. "No," I said. "They won't." "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means," I said carefully, "that excluding me doesn't make the risk disappear. It just makes it quieter." "You're overreacting," he said. I ended the call before he could say anything else. That night, I opened the folder labeled Bennett again. I added a subfolder, Wedding. I wasn't planning revenge. Not yet. I was documenting. There's a difference. People like my family think control is loud. They think it comes from deciding who gets invited, who gets cut out, who gets to speak. They don't understand that real control comes from knowing where the leverage is buried. And I was starting to see exactly where they'd hidden it. If you've ever been told to let it go when something felt fundamentally wrong, you already know what comes next. I didn't tell anyone what I'd found. That was the hardest part. Not confronting them, not demanding explanations. Silence requires discipline, especially when you finally understand the shape of the lie. For the next week, I lived 2 parallel lives. By day, I was Laura Bennett, compliance director, attending meetings, approving workflows, reminding junior analysts to document everything twice. By night, I was something else entirely. I was a woman reconstructing her family's financial anatomy from public filings and quiet omissions. The more I looked, the clearer it became. My parents weren't wealthy. Not really. They were liquid in appearance, illiquid in reality. Everything they had was tied up in structures that depended on goodwill, timing, and other people's money, including the wedding. Claire's venue deposit had been paid by a Harrington-linked account. The caterer was a Harrington referral. Even the floral designer was owned by a Harrington cousin. The entire event was a showcase, not a celebration. And showcases don't tolerate variables. Variables like me. On Tuesday evening, my mother invited me to dinner. Just me. No Claire, no Dad. That alone told me everything. "I thought it might be good for us to talk," she said when I arrived, smoothing her napkin on her lap like she was about to negotiate a ceasefire. The restaurant was neutral ground. Mid-range. Quiet. Somewhere she could feel reasonable. "You've been distant," she added. I smiled politely. "I've been busy." She studied my face, searching for cracks. I gave her none. "We never wanted to hurt you," she said finally. "You know that." I took a sip of water. Intent doesn't erase outcome. She flinched slightly. Good. That meant she was listening. "The Harringtons are traditional," she continued. "They care about cohesion, about family presenting a united front." "And I disrupt that?" I asked. She hesitated. "Just a fraction too long." "You're independent," she said. "You ask questions. You don't blend." Blend. Like wallpaper. I work in compliance, I said. That's literally my job. Her lips tightened. This wedding is important for Claire, she said. It's opening doors. There it is, I said quietly. She looked up. What? The truth, I said. This isn't about me embarrassing anyone. It's about access. Her shoulders dropped. Just a little. You don't understand how fragile this is, she said. Your father's company is exposed. If the Harringtons pull back, it collapses, I finished. I know. She froze. I let the silence sit between us, heavy and undeniable. You've been looking into things, she said finally. Yes, I said. How much do you know? Enough. Always enough. I know Bennett Family Holdings absorbed Harrington Freight Solutions 18 months ago, I said calmly. I know the loans were forgiven off books. I know the wedding venue is owned by a Harrington trust. And I know my presence raises questions you can't afford. Her face went pale. You had no right, she whispered. I leaned back in my chair. You had no right to cut me out of your daughter's life to protect a deal. Her voice sharpened. This family survives because we're careful. No, I said. This family survives because we lie. She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Why are you doing this? She asked. What do you want? That was the question she should have asked years ago. I want honesty, I said. And I want boundaries. She laughed softly, humorless. You're going to blow this up over feelings? This isn't about feelings, I said. It's about consent. You made decisions that involved me without involving me. You weren't involved, she snapped. That was the point. There it was. The sentence that clarified everything. I stood up and placed my napkin on the table. I won't be at the wedding, I said. Relief flashed across her face before she could hide it. But, I continued, I won't be invisible either. She frowned. What does that mean? It means I won't lie for you, I said. I won't cover. I won't reassure anyone who asks where I am. Her jaw tightened. You wouldn't. I already am, I said. I left cash on the table and walked out before she could respond. 2 days later, my analyst emailed me an update. Subject line: Ownership clarification. Urgent. I closed my office door before opening the attachment. What I saw made my breath catch. Bennett Family Holdings wasn't just leveraged. It was contingent. There was a clause buried deep in one of the Harrington loan agreements. A morality clause. A reputation safeguard. If any event tied to the Bennett name created reputational risk for the Harrington family, funding could be withdrawn immediately. No appeal. No grace period. And the wedding? It was listed as a strategic partnership milestone. Meaning if anything went wrong, if anyone asked the wrong question, if any narrative slipped out of alignment, everything could unravel. I sat very still. They hadn't just excluded me to protect feelings. They had excluded me to control the story. That afternoon, Claire finally called. Why didn't you tell me? She demanded, voice tight. Tell you what? I asked. That Mom was crying, she said. That you're threatening not to come. I'm not threatening, I said. I've decided. This is my wedding, she snapped. You don't get to make it about you. I didn't. She inhaled sharply. You don't understand what I'm dealing with. Neither did I said. Until now. There was a pause. Then softer, almost scared. Are you going to say something? She asked. To who? To anyone, she said. The Harringtons. Dad. People. I'm not saying anything, I said. I'm just not lying. That silence again. The one that always scared them more than anger. You always do this, she said finally. You make everything complicated. I closed my eyes. No, I said. I make things honest. She hung up. That night, I added one more document to the Bennett folder. A timeline. Dates. Transactions. Decisions. Exclusion. I wasn't planning to confront anyone. I was preparing to act. Because once you see how your absence is being used as leverage, you stop asking for a seat at the table. You start deciding when to flip it. The wedding was getting closer, and so was the moment they realized silence cuts both ways. The first invitation came in the mail 3 days later, not to the wedding, to the rehearsal dinner. A thick embossed envelope. Cream paper. My name spelled correctly for once. I didn't open it right away. I left it on the counter while I made tea, while I watched the steam curl upward like something trying to escape. When I finally slid it open, The wording was careful. We would be honored if you joined us for an intimate family gathering the evening before the ceremony. No mention of the ceremony itself. No apology. Just a controlled concession. They were testing the perimeter. I didn't respond. By Friday, the calls started. First my aunt, then a cousin, then my grandmother again. This time with a tremor in her voice that sounded less like concern and more like fear. "Your mother says you're planning something," she whispered. "I'm planning to respect myself," I said. "That's not what she means," my grandmother replied. "She says you're going to embarrass the family." I almost laughed. "I'm not attending the wedding," I said. "I'm not speaking to the Harringtons. I'm not making a scene." "Then why are they so worried?" she asked. "Because they knew I could. Because my silence wasn't obedience anymore." At work, the Harrington file moved to final review. The contract they wanted required a public disclosure of beneficial ownership. Nothing dramatic, just transparency. I forwarded the requirement to their legal counsel with a neutral note. Per regulation, this will be required prior to final approval. No commentary, no warning. Their reply came within the hour. "We'd like to discuss this requirement further." I scheduled the call for the following Tuesday, 2 days before the wedding. On Sunday night, my father showed up at my apartment, unannounced. I opened the door and didn't invite him in right away. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. His jacket was wrinkled. His hands trembled slightly when he adjusted his glasses. "Can we talk?" he asked. I stepped aside. He sat on my couch like a guest, not a parent. That felt new. "Your mother is beside herself," he said. "She thinks you're going to ruin everything." "I'm not doing anything," I replied. "I'm not attending." "That's doing something," he said gently. I sat across from him. "You taught me contracts," I said. "You taught me leverage. You taught me to read the fine print." He looked down. "You didn't teach me what to do when family uses silence as a weapon," I added. He sighed. "We're in trouble." I nodded. "I know. The Harringtons are nervous," he continued. "They think you're unpredictable." "I'm predictable," I said. "I document." He flinched. "They want assurances," he said, "that nothing will surface." "There's nothing to surface," I said, "unless you're hiding something." Another silence. He didn't deny it. "Your mother thinks if you come to the rehearsal dinner," he said, "if you smile, if you show goodwill, this will all calm down." "And what do I get?" I asked. He looked at me then. Really looked. "I don't know," he admitted. That honesty almost hurt more than the lies. "I'm not interested in calming anyone," I said. "I'm interested in not being used." He rubbed his face with both hands. "They're asking for one thing," he said. "Your cooperation." "I already gave them that for years," I replied. "They just didn't notice." He stood slowly. "I wish you'd told us you were unhappy," he said. I met his eyes. "I did. You just heard inconvenience." He left without arguing. That night, I received an email from Harrington Logistics' legal team. They'd like to amend the disclosure requirement. I smiled for the first time in days. The morning of the rehearsal dinner, my sister sent one last message. "Claire, if you love me, you'll be there tonight." I stared at it for a long time. Love, in my family, had always come with conditions. I typed a response and deleted it. Then typed another. "Me, I love you. That's why I won't pretend this is okay." I turned my phone face down. At 6 p.m., while my family gathered under string lights and champagne flutes, I sat at my dining table with my laptop open. I drafted a formal compliance memo. Subject: Beneficial Ownership Disclosure, Harrington Logistics. Attached: Timeline, Documentation, Public Records. I didn't send it yet, but I saved it. Because sometimes the most powerful move isn't exposure. It's letting people know you're ready to stop protecting them. The wedding was 2 days away, and for the first time, they were the ones waiting on me. The call with Harrington Logistics happened at 9 a.m. sharp. 4 faces appeared on my screen. 2 attorneys, 1 senior operations officer, and at the far end, slightly out of frame, a woman I recognized immediately. Margaret Harrington. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't need to. Power announces itself in silence. "Ms. Bennett," one of the attorneys began, voice smooth. "We appreciate you making time on such short notice." "I didn't," I replied calmly. "This was the earliest slot you requested." A flicker of irritation crossed his face. "Good. We have concerns about the scope of the disclosure you're requesting," he continued. Specifically, the requirement to identify beneficial owners beyond immediate corporate entities. That requirement is standard, I said, and already outlined in the regulatory framework. Margaret leaned forward slightly. It is unusual in situations like this. Only when people expect exemptions, I replied. The room went very still. You understand the timing, the operations officer said. This contract is critical. I do, I said. That's why compliance matters. Margaret finally spoke. You're Laura Bennett, she said. Not a question. Yes. Her eyes narrowed, not with hostility, but recognition. You're not attending the wedding, she said. No. Another pause, then a small, thoughtful nod. That complicates things, she said. For whom? I asked. She smiled thinly. For everyone. The attorney cleared his throat. We'd like to propose an alternative, a summary disclosure. Names withheld, oversight assured. I shook my head. That won't meet the standard. Margaret studied me like a chessboard. You're very certain, she said. I'm very documented, I replied. Silence stretched. Then she leaned back. Tell me something, she said. If this were anyone else's wedding, would we be having this conversation? No, I said. If this were anyone else's wedding, I wouldn't have been excluded to manage risk. Her lips twitched. Almost a smile. I wondered when you'd say that. The call ended shortly after. No agreement, no threats, just an understanding. At 11:30 a.m., my father called again. They know, he said. The Harringtons know you're holding the line. I'm not holding a line, I said. I'm doing my job. They think you're doing it on purpose, he said. I am, I replied, a long breath on the other end. Your mother wants you to come to the wedding, he said quietly. Not the ceremony, the reception. I closed my eyes. They think if you show up after, he added, it will look like unity without risk. They wanted a controlled appearance, a photo, proof that I'd been managed. No, I said. She's terrified, he said. This could cost us everything. Then maybe you should ask why everything depends on my silence, I said. He didn't answer. That afternoon, I received an email from Claire. Subject: please, no body text. Just that. I didn't respond. At 6 p.m., the rehearsal dinner began without me. I knew because my phone lit up with messages from cousins I barely spoke to anymore. You okay? Your mom looks stressed. People keep asking where you are. I turned my phone off. At 8:14 p.m., my analyst emailed me again. Subject: additional findings. I opened it slowly. One of the Harrington subsidiaries had quietly transferred assets to a trust 2 weeks earlier. The beneficiary listed was not a company. It was my father. I sat very still. This wasn't just about optics. They were positioning him as collateral. I forwarded the file to my personal email. Then I opened a new document. Title: Voluntary Disclosure. I didn't write it yet. I just stared at the blank page. Because now, I understood the full scope. They hadn't excluded me to protect a wedding. They'd excluded me because if I spoke, if I appeared, if anyone connected my job to their structure, the entire arrangement could be challenged. And they'd been willing to sacrifice my place in the family to keep it intact. At 10:30 p.m., my mother finally texted, Mom, if you don't show up tomorrow, don't bother calling us again. I read it once, twice, then I deleted it. Not because it hurt, because it clarified. Some families threaten distance as punishment. Others reveal it as relief. I went to bed early. I slept deeply. The wedding was tomorrow, and I had already chosen myself. The ceremony would go on without me. The consequences would not. The morning of the wedding, I woke up before my alarm. That never happens unless something in my body knows the day will be different. The apartment was quiet. No messages, no missed calls. It was as if my family had collectively decided to hold their breath and hope I would disappear if they waited long enough. I made coffee. Black, no sugar. I stood by the window and watched fog slide between buildings, softening the skyline. Somewhere across town, my sister was getting her hair done. My mother was rehearsing smiles. My father was putting on a suit he couldn't afford to wrinkle. And I was not invited. At 8:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number, I answered. Laura Bennett? A woman asked. Yes. This is Cynthia Miles. I'm calling on behalf of Harrington Family Trust. I closed my eyes slowly. We understand today is a significant personal day. she continued. And we'd like to avoid unnecessary complications. Then you should stop creating them, I said. A pause. Then a small, controlled laugh. We believe there may be a path forward, Cynthia said. One that preserves everyone's dignity. That usually means someone wants silence in exchange for safety, I replied. Another pause. We'd like you to sign a non-disclosure agreement, she said. Limited scope. Narrow duration. There it is, I said. It would apply only to matters involving the Harrington-Bennett financial relationship, she added. In exchange, we'd be prepared to extend certain guarantees. Guarantees for whom? I asked. For your father, she said. Specifically, the air in my lungs went cold. I'll need to review the terms, I said. Of course, she replied. Time is sensitive. She emailed the document while we were still on the phone. I opened it immediately. It was clean, precise, narrowly written, no dramatic overreach, and devastating. If I signed it, I would be legally barred from disclosing information related to the ownership transfers, the trust arrangements, and the loan forgiveness structures. In return, my father's exposure would be capped, his assets protected, his role minimized. They weren't trying to silence me for nothing. They were trying to buy my restraint with my father's safety. I won't sign this today, I said. Cynthia inhaled. Ms. Bennett, today is my sister's wedding, I continued. If your entire structure depends on whether I stay quiet during a family ceremony I wasn't invited to, that's not a business problem. That's a moral one. She was silent now. I will respond after the weekend, I said. Or not at all. I hung up before she could negotiate further. At 10:02 a.m., my father called. Did they reach out to you? He asked. Yes, I said. His voice cracked. What did you say? I said I'd think. A long exhale. They told us you might. Did they also tell you why? I asked. He didn't answer. Dad, I said gently, did you know they were moving assets into a trust with your name on it? Silence. Then a quiet, defeated, no. They were preparing to make you the face of the risk, I said. If this fell apart, it wouldn't be Margaret Harrington explaining it. It would be you. I never wanted this, he whispered. I know, I said. There was movement on the line. Maybe he was sitting down. I thought the wedding was just a wedding, he said. So did I replied. Until I wasn't allowed to attend. He was quiet for a long time. I'm proud of you, he said finally. It stunned me. Not because I'd never wanted to hear it, because I'd stopped expecting it. I don't need you to be proud, I said. I just need you to be safe. He swallowed. What are you going to do? I looked at the document still open on my laptop. I'm going to let them show their hand, I said. The ceremony began at noon. I knew because my grandmother sent a photo of the church steps. White flowers, blue sky, Claire in lace. I didn't open it. At 12:43 p.m., my analyst emailed again. Subject, filing alert. Harrington Logistics had submitted an amended disclosure. Incomplete. They were trying to rush it through. I forwarded the filing to the regulatory board with a single sentence. Submission does not meet statutory requirements. Recommend review. No emotion, no commentary, just fact. At 1:10 p.m., Cynthia Miles called again. Her voice was no longer polished. You've triggered a hold, she said. Yes, I replied. This will delay the contract, she snapped. Yes, I said, again. Do you have any idea what this does? She demanded. I do, I said. It forces the truth into daylight. You're punishing everyone, she said. No, I replied. I'm refusing to protect people who punished me. The reception started at 2 o'clock. I went for a walk instead. The city felt strangely calm. Like the world didn't care that my family was unraveling under a canopy of flowers and string lights. At 3:27 p.m., Claire finally called. I almost didn't answer. Almost. What did you do? She demanded. I went for a walk, I said. No, she snapped. With Harrington. I stopped walking. I did my job, I said. You ruined everything, she said. They're pulling back. Mom is crying. Dad left early. I closed my eyes. They were using him, I said. They were using all of you. You don't get to decide that, she shouted. I already did, I replied. You're jealous, she said. You couldn't stand not being the center. That one hurt. Not sharply, dully. I was never the center, I said. I was the shield. She hung up. At sunset, I sat back in my apartment with the NDA still unsigned. The wedding was over. The marriage had begun, and the consequences were finally moving. Sometimes choosing yourself doesn't look dramatic. It looks like not signing the paper that would keep the lie alive. The first thing that broke was the silence. It cracked the morning after the wedding, when my phone started vibrating at 6:14 a.m. with messages I didn't read right away. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the city wake up, letting the weight of the previous day settle fully into my body. When I finally picked up the phone, there were 12 missed calls. My mother, Claire, 2 cousins, an unfamiliar number from the East Coast, and one message from my father that made my chest tighten. "Dad, they're here." I called him immediately. "Where?" I asked. "At the house," he said. His voice sounded small, compressed. "Harrington attorneys, 2 of them. They want signatures." I swung my legs out of bed. "Do not sign anything," I said. "Not a single page." "I told them I needed time," he said. "They're not happy." "They don't need to be," I replied. "They need consent." I dressed quickly, my movements calm, automatic. This wasn't panic. This was response. "They're saying the funding freeze is my fault," he said. "That if I don't cooperate, they'll unwind everything." "They can't," I said. "Not without consequences." "How do you know?" "Because if they could, they already would have," I replied. I grabbed my laptop and opened the folder again. Bennett, Harrington, timeline. "Put them on speaker," I said. A pause, then muffled movement. "This is Laura Bennett," I said when the line clicked open. "You can address me directly." A man cleared his throat. "Ms. Bennett," he said, "we're here to resolve a situation your actions have destabilized." "My actions followed the law," I said. "Your structure didn't." "That's your interpretation," he replied. "No," I said calmly. "That's the statute." Silence. "You're creating reputational risk," the second attorney said, "for everyone involved." "You did that when you made exclusion a control mechanism," I replied. "We're offering a solution," the first man said. "A release, mutual non-disparagement, asset protection." "For my father," I said. "At my expense." "You're not a party to the original agreements," he said. "I am now," I replied. "You made me one when you tried to silence me." Another pause. I could hear paper shuffling. "We'd prefer to keep this out of regulatory review," he said. "Then you should comply with disclosure," I replied. My father said nothing. He was listening, learning. "We'll be in touch," the attorney said stiffly. The line went dead. At 9:30 a.m., my mother called. I didn't answer. At 10:15, Claire texted. "Claire, Dad won't talk to Mom. What did you do to him?" I stared at the message. Me. I told him the truth. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Claire, you always think you're right." I set the phone down. At noon, my analyst sent another update. Subject: regulatory interest. The board had flagged the incomplete filing. An inquiry was opened. Formal. Documented. That was the moment I knew there was no going back. At 2 p.m., my father came to my apartment. He looked different. Straighter. Quieter. "They wanted me to sign something that would have made me personally liable," he said without preamble. "I didn't understand it yesterday. I do now." I nodded. "They said you were being difficult," he added. I smiled faintly. They always say that about people who read. He sat at my table. He didn't touch anything, just sat. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Not for the wedding, for everything before it." I didn't interrupt. "I let your mother decide who you were," he continued. "I let her tell me you were fine, that you didn't need defending." He swallowed. I was wrong. I closed my laptop slowly. "I don't need you to fight her," I said. "I need you to stop handing her the wheel." He nodded. "I already did." That surprised me. "She asked me to call you this morning," he said, "to convince you to sign the NDA." "And?" I asked. "I said no," he replied. "I said if anyone signs anything, it'll be with independent counsel." And she didn't like that. I leaned back in my chair. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," I said, "the Harringtons decide whether they want scrutiny or compliance." "And us?" "That depends on whether Mom wants control or family," I replied. That evening, the unfamiliar number called again. I answered. "This is Margaret Harrington," the voice said. "I know," I replied. "You've made your point," she said. "I didn't make a point," I said. I enforced a boundary. A pause. We're prepared to restructure, she said. Full disclosure. Clean separation. And my father? I asked. He will be released from personal exposure, she said. Effective. Immediately. I closed my eyes. And the NDA? She added. There will be no NDA, I said. Transparency is the condition. Another long silence. Very well, she said. Then we proceed in daylight. The call ended. I sat there for a long time. The wedding photos were already online. Smiles, flowers, perfection. Underneath, everything had changed. They thought the ceremony was the end. They were wrong. It was just the moment the contract stopped protecting them. The first apology came in writing. Not to me, to the regulators. Harrington Logistics submitted a revised disclosure 3 days later. This one was thorough. Painfully so. Beneficial ownership spelled out. Trust structures named. Transfers itemized down to the cent. When my analyst forwarded it, he added a single line beneath the attachment. They're bleeding. He wasn't wrong. Compliance isn't theatrical. There are no sirens, no headlines, just a slow tightening of parameters until people who relied on shadows start suffocating in light. By Wednesday afternoon, the inquiry had expanded. The contract wasn't canceled. It was paused. Indefinitely. That word does something to powerful people. At 4:22 p.m., my mother showed up at my apartment again. This time, she didn't knock. She stood in the hallway with her arms crossed, posture rigid, like she was bracing for a fight she no longer knew how to win. You could have destroyed us, she said, the moment I opened the door. I didn't, I replied. I stopped protecting you. She stepped inside without being invited. Do you have any idea how humiliating this has been? She demanded. People are calling, asking questions. I closed the door calmly. That's what happens when lies expire, I said. You enjoyed this, she accused. I shook my head. No, I endured it. She paced my living room like a caged animal. They're treating us like criminals, she said. Your sister's in-laws won't return her calls. I leaned against the counter. They shouldn't, I said. Not until the structure's clean. Her face twisted. You always do this, she said. You make everything moral, everything black and white. No, I replied. I make it documented. She stopped pacing. This family survived because I kept things together, she said. Because I managed perception. You controlled people, I said quietly. There's a difference. Her voice dropped. You could have signed the NDA and taught Claire that erasing me works, I replied. Her jaw clenched. She's devastated, my mother said. So was I said. When you taught her that I was expendable, she looked at me then. Really looked. For the first time, there was no calculation in her eyes. Just something like fear. If the Harringtons walk away completely, she said, we lose everything. No, I said. You lose leverage. Dad keeps his house. Claire keeps her marriage. Life goes on. She laughed bitterly. You think this ends cleanly? I think it ends honestly, I said. She turned toward the door. Don't expect forgiveness, she said. I don't, I replied. I expect boundaries. She left without another word. That night, Claire called. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered. They hate me, she said, without greeting. Who? I asked. The Harringtons, she snapped. They think I married into chaos. I closed my eyes. They married into reality, I said. You ruined my wedding, she said. No, I replied. I ruined a lie. She was quiet. They're talking about a post-nuptial agreement, she said finally, to protect themselves. That's for them, she shot back. For you too, I said. You should have independent counsel. She scoffed. You sound like Dad now, she said. I smiled. There was a long silence. Did you ever think about me? She asked. About how this would look? Yes, I said. I just decided not to disappear for it. Her breath hitched. They always told me you were fine, she said softly. That you didn't need much. I didn't answer. I didn't fight them, she continued. About the wedding. I thought if I didn't, everything would stay calm. And did it? I asked. No, she whispered. That was the closest she came to an apology. At work, the inquiry moved into its second phase. Requests. Interviews. Nothing dramatic, just process. Margaret Harrington sent a final email. Subject. Acknowledgement. We will proceed with full compliance and separation. Your father will be removed from all structures effective immediately. No further action will be requested of you. I read it twice. Then I archived it. On Friday evening, my father came by again. He brought takeout. He'd never done that before. I met with my own attorney, he said, handing me a bag. For the first time in 20 years, I raised an eyebrow. He told me something interesting, my father continued. He said I've been managed like an asset. I smiled. He's not wrong. I don't want that anymore, he said. Then don't allow it, I replied. He nodded slowly. I'm moving some accounts, he added. Separating things. Elaine's furious. I know, I said. He looked at me. I should have protected you. I met his gaze. You protected the system. Now you're protecting yourself. He nodded. That's a start. Later that night, I sat alone on my couch. The wedding was over, the fallout ongoing, the future uncertain. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for permission to exist in my own family. They thought compliance would break me. What it did was teach me who I never had to protect again. The story they told themselves started changing before the dust had fully settled. It always does. By the following week, my mother had rewritten the narrative enough times that she almost believed it. To friends, she said there had been miscommunication. To extended family, she said outside parties interfered. To anyone who pressed, she sighed and said, Laura's always been intense. Intensity is what people call you when you refuse to disappear quietly. I heard all of this secondhand. I wasn't invited to the conversations anymore. That, in itself, was a kind of peace. At work, the regulatory review entered what I think of as the quiet phase, the part where nothing seems to be happening, but everything is. Questions went out. Clarifications came back. A few voluntary corrections were made. Harrington Logistics didn't fight. They complied. When powerful people stop arguing, it's usually because they've calculated the cost. On Thursday afternoon, my father called with news he hadn't planned on sharing yet. I filed for a legal separation, he said. I closed my office door. Are you okay? I asked. Yes, he said. Not happy, but clear. I sat down slowly. She accused me of choosing you over her, he continued. And? I asked. And I told her she never gave me the option before, he said. I didn't know what to say to that. I should have noticed sooner, he added. The way she framed things. The way she decided who mattered. She learned it somewhere, I said. We all did. She's angry, he said. She's losing control, I replied. There was a pause. She said you turned me against her, he said. I exhaled. I didn't turn you. I stopped covering. That's what I told her, he said. After we hung up, I sat for a long time staring at my computer screen without seeing it. Families don't collapse all at once. They erode, layer by layer, lie by lie. This was just the moment the foundation finally gave way. That night, I received an email from Claire. Subject: we need to talk. I didn't respond right away. When I finally did, it was brief. Me: I'm listening. We met 2 days later at a coffee shop halfway between our apartments. Neutral ground again. Always neutral ground when truth is involved. She looked thinner, tired. Her wedding ring caught the light every time she moved her hand, like it was still unfamiliar weight. I didn't know, she said before she even sat down. I nodded. I know. They told me you'd understand, she continued, that you always did. I stirred my coffee slowly. That's not understanding, I said. That's expectation. She winced. They said you didn't want attention, she said, that you preferred being separate. I preferred being asked, I replied. She swallowed. When they started panicking after the wedding, she said, I thought you were being cruel. And now? I asked. Now I think I was being convenient, she said. The word hung between us. I didn't protect you, she said quietly. No, I agreed. Tears filled her eyes. She didn't wipe them away. I don't know how to fix this, she said. I'm not asking you to, I replied. I'm asking you not to repeat it. She nodded. I signed a postnuptial, she added. Independent counsel, like you said. That's good, I said. For the first time, she said. They asked me what I wanted. I looked at her. And? I said I wanted space, she said. I smiled then. Just a little. That afternoon, the regulatory board closed its inquiry. Not with penalties. With conditions. Harrington Logistics would proceed under heightened oversight. Clean separation. No hidden beneficiaries. My analyst sent the update with a single line. You won. I shook my head. This wasn't a competition, I replied. That evening, I walked through my neighborhood as the sun went down. Couples passed, dogs barked. Someone laughed from an open window. Life kept happening. I thought about the wedding photos still circulating online. The perfect smiles, the curated happiness. I wasn't in any of them. And for the first time, I didn't wish I were. When the story changes, the silence feels different. It stops being a punishment and starts being proof. The invitation arrived in the mail on a Monday, slipped between a credit card offer and a flyer for lawn care services. A cream envelope. My mother's handwriting. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the counter and made coffee. I answered emails. I let it sit there like a test I didn't intend to take. When I finally opened it, there was no apology inside. Of course there wasn't. It was an announcement. Formal, carefully worded. Family meeting, Sunday. Important matters to discuss. No greeting, no closing, just expectation. The old version of me would have gone. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know how not to. I would have spent the entire week rehearsing answers, calming myself, telling myself it might be different this time. Instead, I folded the paper back into the envelope and slid it into a drawer. Silence is an answer when you stop negotiating your presence. On Wednesday, my mother called. I watched the phone ring until it stopped. On Thursday, she left a voicemail. "Laura, this is getting out of hand," she said, voice tight with rehearsed calm. "We need to sit down like adults. Your father is being influenced, and it's not healthy. I'm trying to hold this family together." She paused, then added, "You always were dramatic." I deleted the message. On Friday, my aunt called. The designated mediator. The woman who always believed both sides were equally emotional. "She's not sleeping," my aunt said. "She's barely eating." "That's unfortunate," I replied. "She's your mother." "And I'm her daughter," I said. That didn't stop her. Silence. "She says you're punishing her," my aunt added. "No," I said calmly. "I'm opting out." That seemed to confuse her more than anger ever had. That weekend, I didn't attend a family meeting. I attended a board review instead. Different room, different rules, same clarity. On Sunday afternoon, my father texted, "I'm proud of you." It was the first time he'd ever said that without qualifying it. I sat with that for a long time. Monday morning, I received another email. This one from a law firm. Subject: Estate clarification request. That got my attention. The message was polite, neutral. It explained that my mother was requesting an amendment to the family trust, specifically a clarification regarding beneficiaries and prior financial contributions. Translation: She was trying to reassert control. I forwarded the email to my attorney with one line, "Advise." He called me an hour later. "She doesn't have grounds," he said, "but she's fishing." "For what?" I asked. "For leverage," he replied. "Or a reaction." "Document everything," I said. "That's already happening," he assured me. When you stop responding emotionally, people escalate administratively. By midweek, the escalation reached its peak. My mother showed up at my building, unannounced, uninvited. The concierge called me from the lobby. "There's a woman here asking for you," he said carefully. "She says she's family." I looked out the window of my office. The city moved below me, indifferent. "I'm not available," I said. "She's insisting," he added. "I'm still not available," I repeated. A pause. "She's upset." "I'm sure," I said. "Please ask her to leave." 10 minutes later, security logged the incident. She cried, she argued, she accused, and then she left. I didn't go downstairs. I didn't watch from above. I didn't need to witness it to know what happened. I had lived it for years. That night, I sat alone on my couch, lights off, city glowing through the windows. I thought about how power shifts feel when you're no longer inside them. They're quieter, less dramatic, more final. I wasn't winning. I was done. On Thursday, Claire texted, "Can we talk again?" I hesitated, then agreed. This time, she came to me. She looked around my apartment like she was seeing it for the first time. "It's peaceful," she said. "That's intentional," I replied. She nodded. "They're furious," she said. "They say you've abandoned the family." "I didn't leave," I said. I stopped pretending. She sat down slowly. "They're trying to figure out how to pull you back in," she admitted. "I know. They don't understand why you're not responding. That's because silence used to scare me too, I said. Now it doesn't. She looked at me carefully. I don't want to be like them, she said. Then don't, I replied. But understand, this distance isn't cruelty. It's clarity. She nodded. Before she left, she hugged me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't performative. It felt real. After she walked out, I stood by the door for a moment. Then I locked it. Not because I was afraid. Because I was choosing. The thing about reclaiming your life is that it doesn't end with applause. There's no soundtrack. No moment where everyone finally understands. There's just a series of quiet decisions. And one by one, they add up. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't confronting someone. It's refusing to show up to the stage they built to control you. The first holiday after everything happened arrived without warning. It wasn't Thanksgiving or Christmas. It was my mother's birthday. That was the one that used to matter most. For as long as I could remember, her birthday had been treated like a national event. Plans weeks in advance, mandatory attendance, carefully chosen gifts that reflected status, not sentiment. This year, there was nothing on my calendar. No reminder, no obligation, no knot in my stomach. The absence felt strange at first, like reaching for a railing that wasn't there anymore. I went to work that morning as usual. Meetings, deadlines, conversations about things that existed in the real world. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I guess you're really not coming. I stared at the screen. I didn't reply. A few minutes later, another message came through. She's devastated. I blocked the number. That was the moment I understood something important. They weren't grieving my absence. They were grieving the loss of leverage. In the weeks that followed, the attempts became more subtle. An article sent by email. Thought of you. A photo forwarded by Claire. Remember this? A voicemail from my mother that started with a sigh and ended with silence, as if that alone should pull me back in. None of it worked. Not because I was stronger than before, but because I was clearer. At work, something shifted too. When people are no longer preoccupied with surviving personal chaos, they get efficient. I stopped over-explaining. I stopped preemptively apologizing. I stopped softening decisions to make them more palatable. And people noticed, not with applause, with trust. During a quarterly review, the board chair leaned back in his seat and said, "You're steady under pressure." I almost laughed. Pressure was familiar territory. Control was the new skill. That afternoon, my attorney called. "Your mother's counsel reached out again," he said. "About what?" I asked. "She wants mediation," he replied. "Family reconciliation." I closed my eyes. "On what terms?" I asked. "She wants you to acknowledge misunderstandings," he said, "and agree to future communication guidelines." Guidelines. Rules for how I was allowed to exist in her orbit. "No," I said. He didn't argue. "I'll respond accordingly." After the call, I sat very still. There was a version of reconciliation that might have worked, one that involved accountability, apologies, change. This wasn't that. This was rebranding. That evening, my father came over. It was the first time he'd been in my apartment. He stood near the window for a long moment, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city. "You did well for yourself," he said quietly. "I built a life," I replied. "That's different." He nodded. "I should have protected you," he said. I didn't rush to comfort him. I didn't tell him it was okay. "I needed you to," I said. He winced. "I know," he said. "I chose peace over truth for too long." We sat in silence. "I moved out," he said finally. "Temporary place for now." "How do you feel?" I asked. "Relieved," he admitted. "Ashamed." "Both." "That makes sense," I said. He looked at me then. Really looked. "You're not angry," he said. "I was," I replied. "Now I'm done." He swallowed. "She doesn't understand why you won't talk to her," he said. "I do," I replied. "She says you're punishing her." I met his eyes. "I'm not punishing anyone," I said. "I'm protecting myself." He nodded slowly. Before he left, he stopped at the door. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "But I hope we can build something. Honest." I thought about that. "We can talk," I said. "But I won't lie to keep the peace anymore." He agreed. That was the boundary. Later that night, I went through old photos on my phone. Birthdays, holidays, group shots where I was always slightly out of frame. I didn't delete them. I archived them. There's a difference. Toward the end of the month, My mother made one last attempt. A letter, handwritten, careful, the tone softer than before. She wrote about sacrifice, about how hard it was to be a mother, about how misunderstood she felt. She wrote about loyalty. She did not write the words, "I'm sorry." I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. Then I put it in the same drawer as the invitation she'd sent weeks earlier. Some things don't need an answer to be complete. The night before the board announced my promotion, I slept better than I had in years. Not because I was excited, because nothing was chasing me anymore. No guilt, no obligation, no role to perform. When the announcement came, it was brief, professional, earned. I accepted it with a nod and went back to work. That evening, alone in my apartment, I poured a glass of wine and stood by the window. The city looked the same. I did not. Freedom doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives when the noise stops, and you realize you're still standing. The last message came on a Tuesday morning, 3 months after everything ended. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't angry. It was quiet. "Your grandmother isn't well." That was all it said. For a moment, the old reflex stirred. The instinct to drop everything, to show up, to absorb whatever emotional labor was required, because that's what good daughters did. I sat with the phone in my hand until the impulse passed. Then I called my attorney. "Is there anything legally relevant I need to know?" I asked. He paused, then said, "No. Her estate plans are unchanged. You're not listed as executor or emergency contact." That answered the real question. I sent one reply, "Thank you for letting me know," and nothing else. It wasn't cruelty. It was alignment. That afternoon, I left work early and walked through the park near my building. The trees were turning. Leaves cracked under my boots. The air smelled like winter coming. I thought about how many moments like this I'd missed before because I was busy managing other people's emotions. I wasn't doing that anymore. My father called that evening. "I understand," he said, before I could speak. "I'm not asking you to choose," I replied. "I know," he said. "I'm choosing now." He told me he'd moved his things out permanently, that he was staying with a friend for the time being, that he'd started therapy. "I'm learning how much I avoided," he admitted. "So am I said. We talked for a while, about neutral things. The weather, a book he was reading, a recipe he'd ruined. It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. Not because it was emotional, because it wasn't strategic. A week later, the promotion paperwork finalized. Title change, compensation adjustment, expanded authority, no ceremony, just an email and a calendar update. I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and let myself feel it. Not pride, relief. That night, I cooked dinner for myself. Simple food, nothing performative. I ate at the counter instead of the table, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. I thought about the years I'd spent trying to earn belonging, how I mistook compliance for love, how I mistook silence for peace, how I mistook endurance for strength. I had been taught that family meant access, that blood overruled behavior, that loyalty required self-erasure. None of that turned out to be true. Family, I learned, is not the group that raised you. It's the group that doesn't need you to shrink to stay. A few days later, Claire came by. She looked lighter, different. "I'm moving," she said, "across the country." "That's big," I replied. "I need distance to figure out who I am without them narrating it," she said. I smiled. "That sounds familiar." She hesitated. "Do you think I'm doing the wrong thing?" I shook my head. "I think you're doing the honest thing," I said. She hugged me before she left. This time, there was no guilt and just mutual respect. On the last Friday of the quarter, I cleaned out the drawer where I'd been storing things I didn't want to look at. The invitation, the letter, a few old cards signed with expectations instead of affection. I didn't burn them. I didn't tear them up. I recycled them. Even paper has a second life. That night, I stood on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching traffic crawl below. I thought about how revenge stories usually end, with someone ruined, with shouting, with a final speech that draws a clean line between good and evil. This wasn't that kind of ending. No one applauded. No one begged. No one suddenly understood. What happened instead was quieter. I stopped responding. They lost access, and the world kept turning. That was the karma, not humiliation. Irrelevance. If there's one thing I would tell the woman I used to be, It's this: being excluded is painful, but being controlled is worse. And sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't proving your worth to people who doubt you. It's building a life so solid that their opinion no longer has a place to land. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the sibling pushed aside, the daughter minimized, the one expected to absorb everything quietly, you're not alone. Your value is not determined at a Thanksgiving dinner. It's not decided by a will, a wedding, a Christmas invitation, or a family business meeting held without you. You don't need permission to choose yourself. You just need to stop asking. If you want to share where you're listening from, or what part of this story hit closest to home, leave a comment. I read them. And if you want more stories like this about revenge, family drama, betrayal, inheritance, and the moment the tables finally turn, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Some endings aren't loud, they're final, and they belong to you.